Rebecca Winter, talented, cheerful, and poor, had arrived at the age of 16 without once seeing a bomb go off. That was not hard to do. London in 1882 was no more explosive than it is now, though it was not less explosive either, dynamite being already a vigorous instrument of politics. However, on this fine May morning, Becky was not thinking of bombs. The sun was bright, and the sky was dotted with fat little clouds like dabs of flake white on a wash of ultramarine, and Becky was walking down a tree-lined road in St. John's Wood in North London, thinking about German verbs. She was on her way to meet her new pupil, her first pupil, in fact, and she was anxious to make a good impression and acquit herself well. Her cloak was a little shabby, and her bonnet was unfashionable, and there was a hole in the sole of her right boot. But that didn't matter. The road was dry, and the air was fresh, and that young man in the straw boater had given her what might have been an interested look. And Becky felt splendid, for she was an independent woman, or nearly anyway. Her head high, she ignored the speculative young man in the boater, checked the road sign, and turned up into an avenue lined with comfortable villas. German was Becky's first language. Her second was English, her third Italian, her fourth French, her fifth Spanish. She was in the process of mastering Russian, and she could swear in Polish and Lithuanian. She lived with her mother and grandmother in a plain boarding house in the most modest corner of Maida Vale, where her mother worked as an illustrator of cheap novels and sensational periodicals. They had lived there ever since they'd been forced into exile from Central Europe, when Becky was 3, sustained by each other's diligence and by the local network of exiles from their own country and others, a poor, noisy, quarrelsome, generous, vigorously gifted bunch of people from almost every country in Europe. It was as natural to Becky to think in several languages as it was to assume that she would have to earn a living. It seemed only sensible to put the two things together. At the same time, she chafed at the limitations hemming her in. Like all people with an unromantic appearance, just on the sturdy side of plump, with bright black inquisitive eyes, cheeks that flushed too easily, unruly dark hair, she had, she was sure, the soul of a brigand. She hungered for romance. The only romance she'd known so far had been a liaison with a butcher's boy when she was 12. He had sold her a cigarette in exchange for a kiss, but she hadn't even smoked it all, because he said it was dangerous for women to smoke cigarettes in case they went mad. So they sat in the bushes and shared it, and she was sick over his boots, which served him right. Somehow, though, it hadn't satisfied her soul. She longed for cutlasses, pistols, and brandy. She had to make do with coffee and pencils and verbs. But there was a consolation in the verbs. She was genuinely fascinated by how languages worked, and if she couldn't live with a band of robbers in a Sicilian cave, she was prepared to study linguistics and philology at university. But that cost money. So she had done what many of her fellow exiles did, and placed an advertisement offering her services as a language tutor specializing in German and Italian. It had drawn a reply almost at once. It was a curious reply, too. A young gentleman, who had insisted on speaking English, though it was clear to both Becky and her mother that he'd have been happier in German, had engaged her to come each morning to his villa at number 43 Church Road, St. John's Wood, and tutor a Miss Bevan. The money he offered was ample. His embarrassment, he was a very young man, was plain. Becky and her mother had spent hours afterwards speculating about him. Becky was sure he was an anarchist. Her mother was equally sure that he was a nobleman, or even a prince. "I have seen princes, and you have not," she said. "Believe me, he's a prince. And as for her—" They couldn't begin to guess about Miss Bevan. Was she young, old, a child, a beautiful, sinister spy? Well, Becky thought, she'd soon find out. She turned into Church Road and was about to open the gate of number 43, which was a white-painted villa with a front path shadowed by heavy laurels, when someone said, "Excuse me, miss." She stopped in surprise. It was the young man in the straw boater. How had he arrived in front of her? He was in his early 20s, with a vivid, intelligent expression, green eyes, and hair the same colour as his hat. There was an air about him she couldn't quite place. He was a gentleman, to judge by his appearance, but something about his confident manner spoke of acquaintance with stables and stage doors and low public houses. "Yes," she said. "Do you happen to know the young lady who lives in this house?" "Miss Bevan? As a matter of fact, no, not yet. I've been engaged to teach her German. But who are you, and what business is it of yours?" He produced a card from his waistcoat pocket. It said, J. Taylor, Consulting Detective, and gave the address of a photographic firm in Twickenham. Becky felt slightly unreal. "You're a detective? What on earth are you detecting?" "I think your Miss Bevan might be someone I've been looking for," he said. "I'm sorry to take up your time. May I ask your name?" "Miss Rebecca Winter," Becky said frostily. "Excuse me, please."